All right, now that all the live is going on everywhere, what's up, sports fans? Welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast live stream, episode number 52. I am live on Facebook Live, I'm live on YouTube Live, on Spreaker. So, anywhere that you can go and see this live, you could definitely get there. This one, episode 52, it's technically a year of episodes, even though there was a short hiatus there. It's been 52 episodes, a full year. And on this podcast, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to do something where I get to give back to everyone that has made this show without my amazing guests, my amazing supporters, all the people that are jumping in this room and watching right now on Facebook. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope Facebook can hold up because the last few times we've done this, it's cut out in the middle. If I can get to sports, I'm going to. But today, the focus today is genuinely on the fans. It's genuinely on my guests. It's genuinely on my supporters. And it may bore some people a little, but I'm going to run down a list of the people that have made this what it is, and I'm going to start off with my guests. So if you were looking for a heavy sports podcast or live stream, I'm sorry, but what you're going to get is, for the year episode, a really big thank you to anyone and everyone who has made this podcast what it is. I'm going to start off with a huge shout out to a group of guys. They have made this podcast. They were there in the beginning. They are the foundation of what Sports Opinions Podcast is. They are a group of great guys who I'm blessed to have met. And really, this thing couldn't have gotten off to where it was now if it wasn't for them. Whenever I needed a guest, if I was in a pinch, when I needed guests early to come on and talk sports, it was this group of dudes that always jumped at the opportunity and were the people that were completely behind me in doing the podcast. That's Kyle K-Doc Doctor, student at Louisville University, Matt Santos, a student over at George Washington, Robert Planner, a student at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and a standout all East region. He just won defensive end, so congrats to Rob for that. Joe Hackett, aspiring rapper Hack, and also FDU student. Colton Gesser, a Rowan student, and you also heard him on OCC Radio talking sports last year. Kyle Burns, he's a massive Philly sports fan. And of course, my brother, who I wouldn't have known all of these guys if it wasn't for my brother, David Cuesta, George Mason student, big Jets fan. Now, all those guys I just mentioned, they, like I said, they are the cornerstone. They are the foundation of this podcast and everything that I've been able to do here. Like I said, if there was a time where a guest had to drop out or, last second, I couldn't find one or I couldn't, because in the early going, no one knew who the hell I was. No one cared who the hell I was. People probably still don't really, but I'm starting to slowly but surely gain some traction here. And these guys were there. They were the ones that when I said, hey, you know what? I had my sports blog. I had sports opinions. But now I want to go do a podcast because sports opinions was really time consuming. I still have the blog. I still use it. Not as much. But I was like, hey, you know what? I'm constantly talking about sports. Why not just get out there in a podcast? None of these guys shot it down. They all were all about it. And like I said, if I was in a pinch, if I needed a guest, hell, K-Doc and Santos guest hosted it and did one of the best podcasts that Sports Opinions ever had. It was fun and it was great. And these guys constantly come back on. They're always requesting to come on and they are always welcome. So definitely a big shout out, a big thank you to those 6 guys right off the bat, cornerstones of this podcast, and they will be a part of it from the beginning. And when it eventually comes to an end, if it does, I hope that's not anytime soon. They will all be there because they are all super important to this process. Next guy I want to give a shout out to, he's a man that has been influential in my life for a really, really, really long time. He's a guy that I've known now, almost 11 years. He was at my wedding. Chuck Williams, head Marist women's cross country and track and field coach. When I first got to know him, he was the Marist men's sprint coach, and he influenced me a lot. He came on the podcast, brought a lot to the table, had great conversation, Have to thank you, Chuck. You were amazing. Another guest, Josh Siegel. He was a former athlete of mine, great runner over at Marist College. Always there for me. He always sits there. If I shoot him a text, he always responds. He's always giving me feedback. I know he listens to the podcast whenever he has a chance. He's really busy. Another guy definitely saying thank you to Josh. Um, Another man influential on me throughout my whole life, Steve Fence. I've known him since I was a kid. Had an amazing podcast with me here. He is a New Egypt High School head football coach. We had an amazing podcast talking about more than just sports, talking about coaching young minds, molding young minds, coaching athletes, and also being a parent and coaching your kids and learning how to back off and learning how to let them do sports. It was a unique, fun podcast, and I am forever grateful to just forever grateful to have guys like him coming on. And like I mentioned, look at the comment section on Facebook right now. Matt Santos, one of those cornerstone, one of those pillar guys that just make sports opinions what it is. And he's right now leaving the best parties ever in sports. I'll recap those once he's done, just because that'll be fun to do. Next guy, I want to Billy Hild, former teammate of mine. He at Marist, he ran track, came on right when Mike Francesa was coming back on. He's a massive Mike Francesa fan, and it was lots of fun to have him talking. We reminisced about old times. We talked Mets. We talked about some good stuff there. Really grateful to have Billy Hild on. Brittany Schmidt, she's like family to me. She's Joe Hackett's sister, Hack. She's amazing. She's a Panther super fan, one of the most knowledgeable football fans you will meet. And she also knows her wrestling. So it's amazing that she even agreed to come on. And I'm truly grateful. Would love to have her on again. Dee Dee Williams, teacher, coach, motivational speaker. When he was on, man, I would have ran through a wall for him. The dude can make you just feel some type of way. And again, another person that agreed to come on this podcast didn't have to and is just great. Now, Santos has completed his list. I just want to stop right here. He made a list of the best partiers ever in sports. Let's read his list here. Top 5. Number 5 is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods got into what Tiger Woods got into, so I think there was a lot of partying going on with Tiger. Charles Barkley, I could see Sir Charles breaking it down. He's a happy, jovial dude. Deion Sanders, yeah, I could see that. Draymond Green just wants to kick dudes in the crotch, so I don't know if I qualify him as a partier. And Michael Irvin, I don't know. I think you got to put LT in there. I think you got to put Lawrence Taylor in there. I don't think any guy did more coke before a game and partied. So, Matt, I think you got to make an addendum to your list. Can you explain why that list came to be while I'm still giving out my shout-outs here? Matt, I need an explanation. So give me an explanation where that list came from. Next, I have Craig Leper, another guy just like Dee Dee, good friend. Both of those guys back home from Jersey, good friends. And both of those guys they make you feel some type of way as a person. They just are great guys. And Craig Leper, he has EPP, a form of porphyria, and he's basically means he's allergic to the sun. And he goes outside. If he stands out in the sun or a hot day too long, he gets boils on his skin. It really sucks. But he never let it stop him. He played football like he never let it stop him. He was just another kid. He came out, he played football, sat in the sun, wearing everything covered, and he was just a great dude overall, and he continues to do great things. He's out there in Hollywood, messing around with movies and TV and just being awesome. He was always a great showman, but he also wants to have kids that also suffer from EPP live normal lives. He started Shadow Jumpers, which is a nonprofit foundation. Please go support Shadow Jumpers. Look them up. They have an Instagram. It's at Shadow Jumpers. Please go look them up. Craig does great work, and any donations you can give to Shadow Jumpers will help a kid that suffers from EPP that doesn't know that they can live that normal life, or their family doesn't know the type of lives that they can live. They just sent their first kid over to Orlando, had them basically an itinerary of how they can get around at night, what they can do during the day to make sure that people know that they can live a normal life. So Craig, awesome dude. So grateful to have him as a guest. So grateful to have him as a guest. All right, let's see. Matt says, called his list awful. It's not the best. But Michael Irvin, he's in there. No, there was no guarantee that Irvin showed up on Sunday. Maradona in there. I don't know enough about Maradona, so I can't say. Darryl Strawberry, yeah. Doc Gooden, yeah. Are you just going off dudes that used a lot of drugs while they were playing, Matt? Is that basically what we're going with? Because Ricky Williams has to be in there. It was a different type of partier, but the dude was a stoner. So if you're going for lists like that, that's exactly what you got to go for. Next guy, next guest, I'm giving a shout out to Skip Robinson, Alan Skip Robinson. He's the man, the myth. He came on. We never could get a chance on when he can come on. We couldn't get that together. Finally, did talk some Jets, talk some Mets, talk some Tiger. He was 100% right about the Jets and Todd Bowles. So thank you, Skip, for coming on. Wes Moore, head women's soccer coach over at Manchester Township. Congrats to Manchester Township. They ended up having another great run, a great group of girls he coaches there. Had a great conversation again about coaching, about women's sports, about all that stuff that a lot of people don't really look into. So he was a great guest to have on. He brought on an amazing perspective. And I also have to rip on him about Ohio State right now because Urban, we got to have you on again soon, Coach Moore, because Urban Meyer stepping down. We got to talk about that. We got to figure out what the hell's going on at the Ohio State. Tim Keegan came on here. He's a former teammate of mine, Marist. We had a nice marathon podcast. It was fun because he recounted his experience running the New York City Marathon. He's a former 10K guy, really good runner in the 10K, varsity athlete all 4 years running Marist track distance, and he was recounted his story about the New York City Marathon. If you didn't listen to that, go back and find Tim Keegan's podcast. At least listen to that first portion when he's describing the marathon. I promise you, you will laugh at some of the things he said, especially if you're a runner. Oh my God, Santos is still going. Sugar Ray Leonard, Floyd Money Mayweather. Yeah, Skip Robinson. Skip can party. He definitely can party. And Jameis Winston definitely parties. Jameis Winston just loves himself some crab legs, okay? Leave the man alone. Nothing wrong with crab legs. I don't like them, but he just loves himself some crab legs. Most recent guy that I had on, Scotty Forrester. He's a Circuit Works fitness coach. We had a great conversation just about sports in general. He's a Sixers fan. Who else did he like? I'm drawing a blank on the other teams. But we had great conversations. He talked to me about fitness. He enlightened a lot of people about what he does. He's going to take over the Circuit Works gym over there by him. He's out in California doing awesome stuff. Thank you to Scotty Forrester for coming on. Luke Teitelbaum, good buddy from Marist College of mine. He's the hashtag Nicksape, one of their co-founders. Go look him up on YouTube, on Twitter at Nickstape. They're the original. He's a Knicks super fan. He's a big Mets fan, and he's a suffering Jets fan of mine. But Nickstape is there, and definitely go look him up because he is great. Matt, thank you for coming on. You got to go play soccer. Have fun, brother. Good luck. Go win. Ryan G. Money Fasciano, co-host of Popcorn and Cleats. A special thank you for him to coming on. He's a good buddy of mine from Poughkeepsie. I met him through my buddy Rudy. Popcorn and Cleats, great podcast. Give you a perspective on both sports and movies. They mix a little bit of both in. Got to really thank him for coming on. We had some great conversations just about sports in general. Britt, I see you just jumped in the room. I already mentioned you and gave you a thank you, but I'll give you a thank you now that you're in the room, Brittany. I just want to say thank you about coming on, being a guest on the podcast. You were awesome, and I would love to have you on again. Anel Alexis was another guest. He's a pro basketball player from Europe. He went to Marist. I knew him there. And it was just lots of fun to just recount his time at Marist, which ended too soon in my eyes because he transferred out for the better. But just talking about his experience at Marist and going through being a guy who was always successful and always good in high school, went to one of the most prestigious high schools in New Jersey, to battle adversity, play well in his second stint in college, and now have a chance to be a pro over in Europe. And I think he also might be in South America as well, but it's just awesome to have him on. He was my first pro anything to come on here, so I am forever grateful for you, Anel. And I would love to have him on again, obviously. I think Wally, the Million Lira Man, you hear that suave, sultry voice every single week when we do our picks against the spread for NFL football. Wally, my man, thank you so much. You constantly are on. You are great. And I can't wait to continue to do all the betting stuff with you. My sister, Christina Klein, we had one of the more unique podcasts on here. We specifically talked basically about parenting in sports. And we just covered a whole wide spectrum of parenting in sports. And I'd be remiss to say, to let you know my sister's title. She is the assistant managing editor for weekends over at CNN. Unbelievably proud of her for everything she's accomplished. And that podcast was one of the funnest podcasts I had, not just because of the content, but because I was talking to one of my best friends. Grew up with my sister. She has been a person that I've always confided in, always looked up to. Still am looking up to her. And thank you, Christina, for coming on. I am definitely going to force you to come on here again because it was a blast and we had great conversation. TJ Kidd, not going to lie, when I had TJ on, it was a little bit earlier in the podcast. I was starstruck a little bit. TJ is a teacher. He is a basketball coach. He has a training camp. And that is really what makes him. I'd be remiss not to say and tell you he is the son of the great Jason Kidd, but TJ is much more than that. And he was an unbelievable guest to have on. TJ, if you hear this, hit me up. We got to do it again. Phil Watson, site expert at nothingbutnets.com. I wrote for nothingbutnets.com for a little bit. He came on as a site expert afterwards, but was gracious enough to still come on my podcast. We talked a whole lot about NBA, a whole bunch of different wide-ranging topics in sports. I'm pretty sure we talked some Yankees. We talked Brooklyn Nets. Hello. And he's just was such a great guy. He's still a good friend of mine right now in terms of the writing world. Does an amazing job over at Nothing But Nets and holding it down. It is one of the best fan-sided websites, easily one of the best run. And I'm happy to have him on. And if the Nets ever get good again, maybe I'll have him on again. Tirado Jr., also under the fan site umbrella. He's the site expert over at thejetpress.com. And if you heard a few weeks in a row, we were doing fantasy focused player for the New York Jets. And we stopped doing it because the Jets kind of sucked and there was no one really on fantasy worth doing it. But he was also on here for a regular podcast. Such a good guy, just such a good dude overall, and continues to be, like Phil, a friend of mine and someone who is bound to be back on the show at some point. Oliver Maroney, he's a writer at lineups.com, NBA guy. He also is a Big Three fan and aficionado. A guy that didn't have to come on here. I kind of cold messaged him and he agreed to come on, and we had a hell of a podcast together. The dude knows his stuff about the NBA, and if you are a Big Three fan, Oliver Maroney is a must follow. Go find him on Twitter, look him up. I think it's O Maroney NBA is his tag. So definitely go find him. Great guy, great guest. Nick Gelso, he is the CEO and founder of CLNS Media. That is a Boston-based media company, and he covers everything Boston. Celtics, Bruins, Patriots. Who else? They have another team. But all Boston things. Boston, 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 Boston. And he's great at it. And the guys he hires is great at it. It is a legitimate, thriving company, and it is going to be an empire in Boston if it's not already. Nick, another guy who I just kind of cold messaged, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come on and do it. And what a podcast it was. I've listened to it several times still. The knowledge he brings, the conversation that me and him had just about the Celtics overall was so much fun. And I'm just so gracious for him coming on as a CEO and founder. It's really cool of him to be able to still want to do things like that. Brandon Scoopy Robinson, my man, he's an legitimate NBA insider. If you're an NBA fan and you're not following him on Twitter, what are you doing? He is the guy that most recently he's broke that Markelle Fultz shoulder injury was more than it was. He's been talking about Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis coming over to the Lakers for probably almost half a year now. He definitely called Jimmy Butler having a good possibility going to the Sixers. Again, if you're not following this guy, what are you doing? He's an NBA dude. He is a guy that literally gave me a huge chance in this. He had me when I was just a writer at Nothing But Nets and Nobody. I wrote a little auto bio on him at his request I think it was 2 decades of him being in media since he was 12 years old in sports media, and it became a friendship from there. And I asked him to come on the show. He's been on the show twice. He'll be on the show again shortly before the trade deadline for the NBA. And again, he's a legitimate NBA insider. He's the host of Scoopy Radio, where he has everyone from NBA Hall of Famers like Sir Charles Barkley, just whoever you could think of, and also hip hop artists coming on. And you don't want to miss out on Scoopy Radio. Go look at that. He's a senior writer over at basketballsociety.com, and he's also a contributor at heavy.com. Scoop, man, you're the dude, and we will continue to work together. Always appreciate you coming on my small time show and making it a little bit bigger. Kevin Malice, really good buddy from home, Manchester. It took a while to get him on, but man, when I had him on, was it fun. He's a former NFL player, Rutgers standout middle linebacker, great player over at Rutgers. He was a part of the heyday with the Ray Rice and the unbelievable defense there that almost went to the national championship, but God, he was just a great guy to have on. He's now the VP over at Malka Sports, which is a great little sports network. They do certain things like this where they run podcasts. I know the McCourty twins are doing their thing out of Malka Sports. I would love to have future Walter Payton Man of the Year, Devin McCourty, on it, or even his brother, Jason. I would love to have either of you guys on here. If you listen, come on the Sports Opinions podcast. But Kevin's just an amazing guy. Unbelievable human being, and we had just a great time talking. Awesome conversation. Can't wait to have Kevin on again. And last but not least, from my guest, he's the most recent guy that I just had on, and Andy Kerner. It was just such a blast having Andy on. He's a wealth manager for pro athletes. He currently, like he said, has about half a dozen in the NFL. He also does NBA, MLB, WNBA athletes. He's just an all-around awesome guy. We had such great conversations, unique conversations about the money management side and the wealth management side of sports. He's also an entrepreneur, and he's a grad professor over at Rutgers University, just an all-around, well-rounded guy. A person who I'm hoping I can still stay in contact with and I can eventually call a friend, because Andy was such a fun guy to have on here. I'm 100% going to request to have him on again because it was that much of a good time for me. I would be remiss now. I went through all my guests for the year, and I'm unbelievably grateful for all of them. But I would really be remiss if I didn't mention my supporters. The people, now obviously there's a lot of people that have definitely given me their love. But my main supporters, who every single time I'm doing something like this, that without fail, they are either liking it, sharing it, doing something. So I really need to start off. Kenny, Melissa Martinez, both of you guys. Melissa, you've been my best friend for years. Kenny, your husband, you were a great dude. I'm so happy that you married her. Kenny, you're going to be on soon. We already have that all scheduled, but you two are always giving me love, always just completely and totally having my support, and I really appreciate that. Devin Scalori, work buddy of mine, shares every single podcast of mine, and I can't be more grateful for him and what he does there in trying to spread the word. My buddy from work, Will Decker. Will, we go at it all the time. We mess around, but you always have my back, and you're always supportive of this podcast, liking and sharing a whole bunch of stuff. I can't thank you enough for that. Danielle Fontanella, James LaVolpe, both of you guys just continue to always show support for me. You interact on these live shows and stuff like that. I'm super happy to have you guys in my corner. Nick Musa. Nick, we never actually met. I don't even know if I pronounced your last name correctly, but you're a friend of James, and you obviously like what I did. You heard my shtick that I do here, and apparently you liked it. And Nick, you will be on this program soon. I really appreciate the support. I always see you popping up in likes and stuff. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Eric Perdek, another buddy of mine from home. He's a video game Twitch user now, Twitch streamer, and constantly supporting me. He knows I support him. Awesome dude. And if you like video games, go look for Slurgalurp. You won't be disappointed. Pat Nolan, buddy from home as well. Talked to him a few times. He always supports this. I see him popping up and likes interacting in certain conversations and things that I do with the blog and on here. Can't give you more than enough love for that. Tim Johnson, former athlete of mine, told me a little while ago he downloads all these episodes to listen on his train ride to work. Don't know if he still does it, but even if those handful of episodes he did listen to, thank you very much, Tim. My two good buddies, Miguel and Rudy, as much as we rib each other and mess with each other, you two have been having my back with this from the get-go. Again, both of you always try and interact. Rudy even called in on one of these live shows to talk some MMA. So two guys that have been integral for my life and definitely helping out here. Coach Scheffler, Tom Scheffler from Manchester, one of the most influential men in my life, basically taught me how to be a man when I was in high school when he coached me in cross country and track and field. Supporter, awesome dude, leaving comments here and there. Can't thank you enough. Justin Carloni, Saints super fan, always commenting on any of the blog posts I throw out when I'm doing power rankings and stuff like that. Don't know if you catch any of the podcasts, but just that little bit of interaction there with the blog is always helpful. I always appreciate it. He's a buddy from home. My family, who is unbelievable, mother-in-law Marcy, brother-in-law Russ, father-in-law Jody, you guys have been supporting me from the beginning on this, and without you guys, this isn't possible because I'm always doing stuff like this, and I take the time out of my day and my night to do this, and you guys have just been nothing but supportive of me doing this, and I really appreciate it. My mom and dad, Adele and Alex, Adele's sharing constantly. My dad doesn't have Facebook, or otherwise he would, but he takes the time to listen in his home office when he's just kind of doing nothing. But obviously my mom and dad have just been amazing, and they help to shape me and who I am, and I hope who I am is someone that all you like. Last but not least, my amazing wife. None of this is possible without you, Julie. Love you so much. Thank you. You give me the time to take an hour or so, however long, out of this day to do things like this. And without you, this is not possible. So thank you so much for everything. Everyone else that has supported me. I know Brittany and Joe's mom and dad, they've supported me. They've tried to listen to my uncle, John Porterways, coach over at Manchester High School. He tried to find the app. I don't know if he has yet, but if you have an Uncle John, that's cool. Everyone that supported me. Kelly Govan, Wally's wife, my wife's cousin, she supports me. Everyone that supports me here. It's been a blast. It's been a great year so far. I really appreciate all the support. That's what this podcast was about. This podcast was not about sports. This podcast was thanking all of my amazing guests, all of my amazing supporters, my amazing family, and just hoping that this will be another continued year of growing, more success, more great guests, because this is guest driven. Any of the supporters I mentioned, you want to come on the show. I want to talk to you about sports. Anyone out there that is still listening, you have people that want to talk sports, likes talking sports, send them my way, because my show doesn't work without the guests. I do what I can here, but it does not work without the guests. So please invite them on. I would love to have them on. And that's basically it. That's what's going to wrap up this podcast. I'm not really going to talk sports on this one. I'm just showing love to my guests, showing love to my supporters, my family, because that's what this one was about. It's been 52 episodes. It's been a year of Sports Opinions podcast. I show no signs of slowing down on this. I'm going to continue going. It's my dream to make this my everyday profession. So that's what I'm going to do. And it doesn't get done without the support of the people in my life. So thank you so much. I'm going to wrap it up with that. This was the Sports Opinions Podcast live stream, episode number 52. It's been a year of Sports Opinions Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Cuesta. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, _Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Facebook, you can search for it, and you can listen to the podcast episodes on anywhere you can get a podcast. I'm not going to run that down right now, but literally anywhere you can get a podcast is where you can listen to this. So again, everyone, thank you for listening to this. Genuine thank you for an amazing year of fun, an amazing year of podcasts. And I'm looking forward to 20, 30, 40 more years of doing stuff like this. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.